So you have a really unique window into how companies are navigating some major cultural shifts, the move to work from home, the great resignation, now this downturn, and perhaps some rethinking of the potential to resign. How exactly are companies navigating this?
Yeah, and thanks for having me. It's a great question. So I think we're seeing a really interesting trend start to unfold here. And if you just look at what you reported on today around Microsoft, you see it very clearly. So number one, Microsoft just 2x their comp in this initiative to increase retention and keep their workers in seat. And on the second, they also just announced that they're slowing down the rate of hiring. So there's this really interesting environment going on right now, particularly in tech, where a lot of us founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs are thinking about cash preservation. We're thinking about runway. We're thinking about optimizing efficiency, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that we're also still in a very, very tight labor market. And so how do we keep the folks that we fought so hard to get into our companies? How do we keep them there?
Well, and so how are employees approaching it? Are some employees rethinking whether or not they want to make that job change right now, given that we're now seeing layoffs and hiring freezes?
We're not seeing that yet, at least amongst our customer set, and we deal primarily with the Fortune 2000, but I think we will. I think what we'll start to see is a little bit of a wait and see mode coming from employees. I think we'll also see a continuation in employee demands of employers to sort of make sure they want to know, why are you worthy of my labor? So if I'm going to make a change, particularly in a market that might be a little bit more volatile, I want to make sure I'm going to a place that's going to stick.
So how much progress are companies really making on pay equity? I mean, there's been this concern that, let's say, women, for example, might be backsliding in the pandemic because companies are just prioritizing staying afloat and not thinking about these things.
It's such a good point. And I think the pandemic is a key data point in this, in that we went backwards and we were already making glacial progress against closing the pay gap. And then COVID actually disproportionately added a number of years to our progress. So it made it worse. And I think there's a real danger here of the same thing happening. And particularly among my colleagues and friends that are Black entrepreneurs, people of color, they're really concerned that people will start using the recession as an excuse to go away from some of these commitments toward diversity, increasing representation, committing to pay equity. But on the flip side, I think this is an opportunity for companies because the toothpaste is out of the tube. There's really no going back in terms of what employees want. And with legislation accelerating around pay transparency, California just passed a state bill on median pay gap disclosure on Tuesday. This is going to continue. So companies that are really progressive and think about how can we maintain progress against these initiatives, they're the ones that will ultimately, on the talent side, win out when we come out the other side of this.
Okay, but California just overturned a law, SB 826, that mandated that companies add women to their boards. Here we are, moving backwards. What happened there?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the acceleration has really been on the pay transparency side. So you've got California joining Washington State, New York City, New Jersey, Colorado, passing laws that require companies with over 100 employees to post the range of salary for particular roles. So you've got that happening on the employee side. And then, like you said, you've got the backsliding on the board piece. But I think that's going to be a blip in the road, particularly because you're going to start seeing and continue seeing institutional investors like Goldman Sachs continue to push for more diversity on boards. I mean, they've already expanded from saying one board member has to be from a diverse background to two. And so I think even as you see things like the board decision that was just overturned, you're going to see institutional investors, you're going to see a continuation of activist shareholders, and this coming up in proxy, in addition to hearing from employees who really want this stuff.
Well, speaking of investors, Steph Curry is, of course, one of your investors, and the Warriors just made it officially to the NBA Finals. Yay, go Dubs.
Yay.
How involved is he in the business, and how has his activism around social equity made a difference?
It's made a really big difference. If you think about what's going on in sports with the U.S. women's national team, I think we're hearing a lot more from people like Candace Parker, the WNBA. You're hearing from Eric Armstead on the 49ers. You're hearing from Steph Curry, all weighing in on this really important topic, not just pay equity broadly, but pay equity particularly in sports. And we're starting to see the fruits of that come out. And I think what's great about Stefan is that he was in this game literally and figuratively long before it became the cool thing to do. I mean, he wrote an article about pay equity as far back as 2018 when he had his daughters and was really starting to think about the type of world he wanted to invest in order to create a better environment for them and others like them. So I think what's great about Steph is he's not performative. This isn't just words and talk. He is truly invested in the business and does what he can to help the business.
Now, Warriors coach Steve Kerr made really impassioned remarks a couple of days ago on the day of the Uvalde shooting, and I just want to take a moment to listen to what he had to say.
I'm not going to talk about basketball. Nothing's happened with our team in the last 6 hours. We're going to start the same way tonight. Any basketball questions don't matter. When are we going to do something? I'm tired. I'm so tired of getting up here and offering condolences to the devastated families that are out there.
Maria, what do you make of those remarks and him using that moment to say what he said?
Yeah, I mean, so Emily, you have 4 kids. I have 7. I think what's happening right now, and it's really critical that leaders pay attention to this, that the Edelman Trust Barometer just came out this week saying that workers have the most trust in business than they ever have. It's the highest amount of trust in any institution over government, over media, over Google, which is new. And with that trust, they require transparency. They want CEOs to be speaking out about what they believe can be done on some of these issues. And I think when you look at Starbucks, shutting down stores in Ukraine, you look at Dick's Sporting Goods saying they're going to stop selling weapons in certain stores, the pressure for companies to start having a voice on these things is going to increase. And I also think just the human side of this, I mean, what Steve Kerr did that was so remarkable is he showed his humanness. And in that, he gave other people the right and ability to be vulnerable and to also show their humanness. I mean, if you're a leader, your people are struggling when they see people that look like them killed because of their race. They're struggling when they see people with children that are the same age as their own being slaughtered. So we've got to start thinking about not only taking a stand, but leading with empathy and understanding that we're all humans, and this is tough stuff to process.